conspicuous. I mean strange. Should I have worn a less flamboyant range? Is it obvious that I may be deranged?
Hello, Cathy, and welcome. I'm so happy we get to talk today. What a beautiful day to have a conversation and to celebrate motherhood this week. So thank you for being with me. We just heard a wonderful clip where you played the old women in Jonathan Dove's opera Flight that Opera Parallèle did a few years ago. And you were this older single woman waiting at the airport to go to a very exotic place to meet your much younger fiance. So this is not your life, really, right? So how did you prepare for such a role? Maybe we should. How do you prepare for a role like that?
When I preparing it for this role in particular, I always start with text. I always start with her story, trying to find her backstory. She sort of appears and, she's waiting for this young lover to appear, but what happens before that, and so I'm always trying to find the backstory and filling in all the blanks. And with her, she's so outlandish with this crazy, red wig, which to this day, that's one of my favorite wigs I've ever worn. It's fabulous. Take it with me. But there's already so much comedy built in to the way she looks and all the crazy things she does that I always try to find the truth and really approach the character in a real honest way.
You're very good at finding the balance between. During the rehearsals, I would see moments where it is so funny, yet you brought us to almost feeling that it's so sad at the same time. There was this poetic way of you bringing both emotions on the stage, and all of a sudden it wasn't a stereotype funny character, but it was a real human being with that mixture of characters. Is that something that comes just naturally to you as you perform, or that's something that you really think about before you go on stage?
I think about it in the rehearsal process and try to balance of that fine line between comedy and tragedy, because I think her in particular, she's teetering right on the edge the whole time.
Yes.
There's a sadness about her situation and her loneliness and her desperation that she's showed up in this crazy, get up and, waiting for this young lover that who knows it. And we talked about that a lot too. Like, who knows if this person even existed, if she was waiting for someone that she knew never was going to show up,
But that's such a universal story of these people waiting for something to happen that doesn't happen. You hope for it, which is what we love about opera, is that they bring these real themes, these themes, universal themes that you bring to life so well. When we're talking about 20th century operas, there is this the mother role, which has been often to mezzos. In the past, operas have often been secondary or supportive roles, or they are often evil, or they characterize that role in a very different way than the 20 and 21st century, where we have these composers that are giving a real central place to the mother, and are not actually secondary roles. We had the privilege, Opera Parallèle, of having you perform the mother in Jake Heggie's beautiful opera Dead Man Walking, where you are the mother of this man who has killed two young teenagers. What is the experience of preparing for a role that has such depth?
Oh, well, it was quite an experience preparing for that role. And it kind of took me by surprise because I had already played the other mother of the murdered boy in the world premiere in 2000. And I had covered Mrs. Desrochers, the mother of Joe. And so I thought, okay, and when I went to start to prepare it, I was just so taken aback by the emotion that just came flooding through and could barely get through, my practice sessions. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? And finally, I was able to get to that point by almost feeling like I could almost, sounds strange, but separate myself from it a
Hmm.
little, have a little bit of distance so I could have the strength character demanded.
You had the experience of observing Friederika von Stade do the mother when you were a young singer doing the other mother role. Um, was that a point of inspiration for you as you were preparing for doing that role, or did you
Uh,
approach it very differently?
oh yes, yes. She is. She has an honesty on stage that is so inspiring and has inspired me my entire career. Um, Obviously, her voice is unbelievable, but the honesty that she has and that ability to connect with an audience is something that was just blew me away when she did this role. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. So yes, I'm very inspired by that. But I also had to sort of make it my own and
Yes,
draw on my own experiences as a mother.
yes.
Who has a son who was almost exactly the same age when we did the show, my son in real life, and so I drew on a lot of different aspects of that. Yeah.
It's interesting because in that opera, Sister Helen, who is accompanying Joseph Desrochers through death penalty, has to keep it together. And the mother role, why I think it's a real center or almost the lead role of the opera, is that it brings the opera to the human condition of really of letting us feel that emotion of losing a son like that. So you don't have to keep it in control. You have this whole journey actually through the opera where you can bring us until you cry at the end. I only wanted to see my son one more time. Um, how does one feel that you can at one point you have to stop feeling that burst of control. You have to let us burst, but you have to have that control on stage and let the audience burst. Where
Hmm.
do you get to that place?
I got there eventually. I did start there, and
Yeah.
the first rehearsal I was so overwhelmed because here you have Bob Worth and
Hmm.
Chris, all these magnificent actors just staring you in the face with this hatred because my son had done this to their children, and so I felt that so, and it was just like it was like a tidal wave,
Yeah.
and so I finally did get there. But it took time. It took some time.
I have to say, I remember when you were singing that, and I remember the faces of the players in the pit that were not playing during that aria. And I felt that you were reaching even the players in the pit when you were
Oh,
singing that role, just with the voice that how you were so generous in giving us that love for your son. It was quite amazing.
Don't say a word. Let me look at you. Say, I'm
You're going to be playing another wonderful mother role with us, hopefully shortly, soon. And it is the mother of Harvey Milk, this
hmm.
wonderful man, San Francisco hero, the first openly gay elected official in the history of California, who was sadly assassinated in 78. This is a mother that was a ardent feminist. We know that she had a great passion for social justice. We also read that she actually died of a heart attack carrying a 24-pound turkey on Thanksgiving when she was giving the turkey to dinner for the poor. So a wonderful mother in many ways that must have inspired this wonderful man. So different from the Madame Desrochers. How do
Mm-hmm.
you relate to that role? How do you prepare for a role like that?
Wow. What a woman, first of all. What an inspiration. Um, yeah, preparing for her, I've done a lot of research into her character and her relationship with Harvey. In the opera, the first scene, I'm with young Harvey when he's
Mm-hmm.
old. And so you see that relationship when he was young and her nurturing and her protecting him. That part of it, and also just, the story, his story, and how at the end, he wishes that he could have told me that he was gay. And I think in a way, probably she knew.
Of
Maybe,
course, yes.
yeah,
Oh,
mothers,
yes.
those things. Um, but she supported him really in everything. And, she was always, there was a story where she was, telling her friends that she was so proud that he was going to the opera, and she loved the fact that he loved music and opera. And, so I think, she's a very interesting character, and, building that character and only being in the very beginning of the opera and then having the big scene at the end, kind of filling in those blanks and really, kind of discovering those layers of her character. Because when you're on stage for only a short time, you really have to have all those things figured out. So the audience really knows who you are in a very intimate way. And when you're only on stage for a short time. So
Right, you don't have the time to tell us your backstory as much and that, so you really have to, we have to, just from how you sing it, understand your backstory. Yes, in that opera, from the way though the mother is there, as you said, as the pillar of the beginning and the end, almost showing what motherhood can be, the pillar of a child's life in that way, representing that. Every time he sings "Mama" or that we hear that, we can tell from the music the relationship that you have with your son, and I certainly hope that we can bring it to stage very soon and hear you sing that role. I'm sure you'll be wonderful. So in closing, I wanted to just sort of before we stop here, I just want to ask you, I keep thinking of the responsibility you have in your life of being a professional singer, being a beloved mother and wife, and also being such a great mentor to all these young singers at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, where you have a large voice studio, and you don't teach voice, you mentor them in a career that they all hope will bloom. It's such a huge responsibility. How do you balance, or how do you work through that in your life to have such a wide palette of responsibilities?
well, I first of all, I love it all. So I adore teaching. I always thought it was something I would end up doing.
Mhm.
And I'm just blessed that I can continue to sing and do my teaching at the same time. And of course, the number one thing in my life is my family, and they've always come first. And so any decision that I've made in my career has always been based on my family and what's best for them. And that's been an interesting journey, and I think I've never regretted any decision I've made based on that. But I think being an artist is, there's so many ways to be an artist, and I'm lucky that I can do it both on stage and also in mentoring my students. I think it's, being a teacher is so similar to mothering in the fact that, you're there guiding them, and then at some point you have to just let them
Let
fly.
go.
Yeah.
A
Let
little
them,
bit like performing. In some, you work,
exactly.
you work, and then opening night happens, and you just let it go, and you have to have.
You
So
have to,
all of this, you have to
yeah,
trust. Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Well, like you trust your characters and bring them to life. You trust also your students, and I'm sure your lovely family. Well,
Mm.
thank you. I could not have thought of a better person to have this conversation with on Mother's Day.
Oh,
And I just really appreciate all you've given to Opera Parallel and everything you're giving to the world of music. So hopefully we'll soon be together again on stage.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you, Cathy.